From the Delhi studios of Republic TV, it's time for Arnab Goswami on The Debate.
Arnab Goswami on The Debate at 10.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a fantastic panel coming up in a couple of minutes. Before that, this budget has brought in some much needed relief for the corporate sector with the announcement that aim at increasing capital expenditure. Here are the takeaways for India Inc. and why a capital expenditure focused budget is the best thing in the present season, and then we'll debate.
As Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman read the budget on Monday afternoon, the markets continued to surge. The Sensex shot up by over 2,300 points by the end of trading. With the push for capital expenditure, India Inc. cheered the budget for growth.
I look at this budget as a budget for growth and next generation of reforms. A budget which is reflective of a self-confident India. We are making a big thrust in three important areas: healthcare, infrastructure, and the financial sector.
From the dairy sector,
this budget is very good for the economic development of India. When infrastructure happens, investment not only helps the urban economy but also the rural economy.
to the automobile sector.
There are so many constraints and resources they have to allocate it very judiciously. So within that, I think they have done an excellent job and they have ticked all the right boxes, in my opinion. On the automotive side, to start with, the scrappage policy, they have given the direction. People have been talking about it. Government also has been mulling over it since last many years. Lots of governments probably have talked about it, but I'm happy to say at least this government has implemented it now.
Electric buses, I presume, is a very positive thing because that will give impetus to the electric vehicle transport movement that is happening. So that's a very positive thing for the auto industry. Of course, for few companies, but even so, to get the electric vehicles going is a very positive thing.
To the media industry.
I must say that this was an excellent budget. We could not have asked for anything more. I would give this budget very high marks, 9 on 10.
The corporate sector has welcomed the budget that aims to put India back on the road to $1 trillion economy.
Very, very happy about the budget. It's a massive transformational budget for many reasons. One, it has focused on the needs that Indian economy and citizens have. Second, on infrastructure, human infrastructure and physical infrastructure, human capital and physical capital, I think is fantastic.
The government has gone all out for growth and development, and India Inc. is backing the reforms. Let's debate.
I'm very excited about this panel because I managed to get on board on the panel today three of the most respected people in the world of business, entrepreneurship and investment from the great city of Bengaluru. It's the first time I managed to get three of them together, so I'm particularly, pleased with myself. Happy to bring in Rajiv Chandrasekhar. Rajiv, Member of Parliament, of course, entrepreneur, vast experience in media and telecom sector. Mohandas Pai, and Mohandas Pai needs no introduction. He leads Aaron Capital, one of the most astute investors and very, very open and vocal voice from the corporate world. Someone I respect greatly, Kiran Majumdar-Shaw, who's executive chairperson of Biocon. It's great to have her today. And this really opens up a different quality of budget discussion. And I have Robin Raina. Now, Robin Raina, besides, I think Robin needs to be officially appointed the best dressed, the most fashionable person in the corporate world in India, but he's chairman of the board of Ebix today and serial entrepreneur as well. Robin, thank you for coming in, and to take us through this, someone better informed in business and budget issues than me, Gauri Dwivedi, senior journalist. Thank you very much. So Gauri, I'll do the honors and we'll take the discussion forward. The idea is to have a broad perspective, not political, about the budget. I'd start with Rajiv because Rajiv, you traverse both business and politics now. This budget, does it take the process towards a 5 trillion economy, make it faster? A. B. The fiscal deficit that you now have, how sustainable is it for how long a period of time? And what's the idea behind such a major push on the expenditure front?
No, Arnab, I think before we start drawing these roadmaps for 5 trillion economy, I think it's important that we all understand and take a little bit of a deep breath and understand how far we've traveled in the last 9 months. The progress that this country has made and the resilience that this country has shown in the face of an unprecedented healthcare emergency, an unprecedented economic emergency and shock is truly admirable. I mean, what we have achieved in the last 9 months has a lot of bearing on what we will achieve going forward. It has demonstrated to the whole world and indeed to ourselves what we are capable of. We are capable of starting with almost nothing as we started in end of March, with no capacity for PPE, with very shallow healthcare capacity, economy that went into lockdown for 90 days, and we've come out of that surging and full of confidence. So I think before we draw these runway to the future, it is important to understand how far we've traveled in the last 10 months.
Fix it.
And then it is easier to construct this hypothesis of the future. So I just wanted to make that one point. And the second question of yours in terms of fiscal deficit, Arnab, this is very, very important that you understand that in the current context, at least for the next 1.5 to 2 years, the government is the biggest and the most reliable entity standing in our economy. And it is the government spending and it's the government's strategic spending that is going to determine how quickly this economy does its V-shaped recovery and how much it sustains itself for the next 12 to 18 months before private sector capital kicks in. So both these are very important, but what I would repeat for your benefit of your viewers and for the panel is that it's very important to understand how far we've traveled in the last 9 months to be a lot more confident about how far we can travel for the coming years.
I have no disagreement with you at all on that. I'm just going to keep my questions very broad. So my next question will be to you, Mohan, that sometimes a crisis awakens our own animal spirits and our risk-taking appetite, right? I'm not being critical of whether the government should have done this earlier, but it is a matter to think about, isn't it? That because of the present situation that we are in, we are looking at many innovative things today, whether in terms of revenue generation or our capacity to relax the FRBM targets that we may not have done had we not been in this kind of a crisis. Mohan?
Arnab, I totally agree with you, but I want to stress on what Rajiv said. Please remember, the greatest economy in the world, the largest economy in the United States, has suffered from COVID in terms of infection and death, 10x what India has done. They are 25% of our population. Their infection rate is 2.5 times what India is. The death rate is 2.5 times what India is, and that is 10x. We must give credit to our Prime Minister for standing up for this country, for having the lockdown, having the courage to take the lockdown, to communicate to our people and tell them this has to be done, and all citizens of this country listening to him and making it work. Look, we have flattened the curve. Our death rate is very, very low. We have come out successful. And in the meantime, during the greatest crisis we have seen for the last maybe 50 years, we have undertaken a tremendous amount of reforms. And most reforms have been accepted by people. And they're going to create the condition for the great growth forward. So we will eliminate poverty in the next 5 to 6 years in this country. We must credit our Prime Minister for doing all this in an extraordinary manner. And our political leadership, all our political leadership has done it. And I think this today, all Indians must stand up and salute our political leadership and the Prime Minister for this. Let us put it on record. Look at the United States, what they have done. The richest country in the world, the greatest military power, they have unlimited amount of money because they can print the dollar to an unlimited amount and see where they are and see where we are. Now, a crisis is a great opportunity for reforms. Happened in 91, it's happened now, but we need a leader to do that. We had Narasimha Rao to do that, even though he was forced and his party stabbed him in the back. Now we have Prime Minister Modi, who has successfully won the election for 2 times with the full support of the people doing that. And I think it's tremendous. And vested interests are now coming out. The farm meditation is by vested interests because they don't want the gravy train, which is being funded by all of us taxpayers, money being given to them to go away. We must stand up to them and show them the way, the right way. Punjabi farmers get the largest quantum of subsidies for any farmers in this country. They are rich. Look at how much money they spend. They're spending an average of 5 crores per day. And they've been there some 70, 75 days. Imagine the money that they're spending just because they don't want the gravy train to go away. So I think great reforms, great budget. We should be very proud of what this country and its leaders have achieved.
I think so. Gauri, I was just about to hand over to you. I'm just tempted for one more question and then I'll hand it over to you to take it forward with Kiran. But before I come to Kiran, where I'm particularly enjoying this conversation is the broad macro perspective, the nature of the beginning of this chat that Rajiv Chandrasekhar and Mohandas Pai have done. It makes me think, Robin, and he referred to the US, and by the way, you started your business in the United States of America. You have a big US presence and now you are investing in India. I think sometimes we undermine our own leadership, Robin, because listening to Mohan and Rajiv, I thought that if you look at how Narendra Modi has charted the story, see social reform, Swachh Bharat, things like that, structural reform, both critical, but sometimes criticized, GST, demonetization, a push towards a digital economy. And now he is doing what I think will define his, his career as Prime Minister so far, which is the big measures looking forward, a massive push in infrastructure. So I'm getting a feeling that perhaps the Prime Minister would have done this regardless of COVID. Or maybe we are linking COVID to this. But maybe the Prime Minister is working to a game plan that is not a 1 year, 6 month game plan. You see, we look at things in 6 months, 2 year figures. Maybe the Prime Minister is charting a 5, 10 year, 15 year game plan that we are now only beginning to see and understand. Robin, what do you think?
You summed it up absolutely in a fantastic manner. Ultimately, while this is a growth budget, this is a budget, it conveys continuity in it. If you look through some of the policies, whether it is the pro-poor policy, whether it is the Swachh Bharat, more money into infrastructure, more money into Swachh Bharat, more money into healthcare, and so on, you will see there is continuity in it. Tax reform, for example, meaning the government took a fantastic step forward some time back to rationalize taxes to 22%. Now they're taking it, there's more continuity in this budget.
Yes.
Next step, they're making it, they're saying now there will be in appellate tribunals don't need to be faceless. They're bringing digitization. They're also trying to bring in, they're trying to attract NRIs into it by saying, okay, double taxation treaties will become easier and so on.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of continuity in it. While this is a pandemic budget to some extent because the government has responded to COVID. The government has responded to the fact that the country needs that V-shaped recovery from here onwards. We need that 11, 12% kind of growth going forward. So the government has taken steps towards bringing in a lot of money into the economy by bringing in money to infrastructure projects, which will by itself generate growth, employment, jobs, and so on. So I see this as growth accompanied with a lot of continuity. And in a way, Mr. Modi is clearly putting his stamp on this budget in the form of saying, look, I came up with the agenda. I am very people-focused. And here I am, while we are in the midst of the pandemic, I'm going to make sure that there is more continuity in what I have been trying to do in my 2 terms.
Absolutely. Gauri, over to you.
Thanks for that, Arnab. And, the question I want to ask Kiran Majumdar-Shaw is about 2 things. One is the fact that there are some sectors which have got a lot of focus in this budget, but there are some like tourism, aviation, the entire hospitality segment, which has almost been bypassed. Keep in mind that this is a sector that has huge employment generation and creates employment. So how does that stand to impact us? And the second question that I'm going to come back to later is about the Narega outlay. And how do you see that falling, especially at a time when we are talking about, loosening our purse strings, so to say?
So let me answer that question in two ways. Before I do that, I just want to say that this budget has actually boosted sentiments on several fronts. On the market front, I think you can see that the markets are very buoyed up because of the fact that there were no negative surprises. I think various aspects of the corporate sector have been addressed, which is also very, very positive. At least from the healthcare point, I'm really delighted to see this very serious allocation of budgetary spend towards healthcare in a very, very robust way. And I think now coming to your question about why were certain sectors overlooked or didn't receive enough, I think first and foremost, the economy hasn't completely opened up. And I think these are some of the sectors which need to fully open up. So before it happens, I think they wanted to focus on the sectors that have opened up and that are showing growth. So I'm sure the government will tweak some of these measures as the tourism sector opens up, as the other parts of the entertainment and hospitality sector opens up. So right now, of course, there is disappointment, I'm sure, in that sector. But I have no doubts about it that as it opens up, I mean, today we still don't have hotels and aviation and everyone running to full capacity. So I think we need to give it time. Right now, of course, there is disappointment, I'm sure, in that sector. But I have no doubt. Right. And as far as Manrega is concerned, I think, one of the things that we must also appreciate is this huge, huge focus on infrastructure. I think infrastructure is a very, very big area which will create jobs, which will open up, a lot of opportunities for the private sector investment as well. Manrega, of course, does need to be expanded because we do need to see rural infrastructure development also taking place in multiple ways. I think the bigger question we have to ask is how are we going to fund all this infrastructure? And I think that's where I hope that all the monetization and the privatization and the divestment measures that are being announced by the government are executed in an expeditious manner because time is the essence.
That is the question. That is the real question. I think Kiran Majumdar-Shaw really, puts it very succinctly, Rajiv, when she uses the word execution. In fact, we have seen this word used multiple times today, and we've seen all the industry leaders, etc. We spoke earlier today to Mr. Uday Kotak, who I respect greatly. He kept talking about execution. Are we in a position to execute with the speed that we need? Rajiv, do we have the bandwidth? Do we have the talent? And do we have I think Rajiv, I lost the line with Rajiv, but so I'll put that to Mohan. Do we have the resources to do it? Because you've raised expectations with today's announcements. Mohan, you want to take that and then I'll ask Rajiv that question. Yeah.
Arnab, we can easily find the resources. Yeah. The word is awash in liquidity. $13.5 trillion of liquidity has been pumped into the world. 50% of government bonds of the OECD is at negative interest rates. India can easily borrow $500 billion at maybe 2 or 3% a year, 30, 35-year bonds. We can easily borrow that. We have to be bold. Please remember, all infrastructure is funded by long-term money, 25, 30-year money. It's only in India is funded by 8-year, 10-year money. Yes. If our insurance companies are not able to give 25-year money to match the liabilities, we must go outside. We have some great companies. We have a government which is sovereign, which rating will be very good if they go and borrow, despite the silly rating given by Standard & Poor or somebody like that. I don't think resource is a constraint. What is a constraint in this country is a mental attitude, is the lack of leadership in this country, is the lack of imagination. And this budget is imaginative, is taken leadership and certain bold steps to take it forward. I don't think resources are any problem for this country, neither for the people of this country, neither for the business, neither for the government.
No, I'm not talking about lack of will. What I was saying, and I think I lost the line there, maybe Gauri, you can elaborate that in more detail with Rajiv. What I was asking was about execution. And execution is key because the thrust that you've taken a call in the government that the recovery is based upon the quality of expenditure. Now, to have that quality of expenditure, Gauri, and you can take it forward with Rajiv, you must execute within weeks, not months.
Yes.
Yeah. Including raising the funds themselves. Gauri.
Absolutely. And
Gauri, you can take it forward. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the question. Yes, Rajiv Chandrasekhar, please respond to the fact that, when you talk about infrastructure projects, these are long projects where taking the funding, getting the land acquired, getting all those clearances, all that in India takes months, maybe years. How do we shorten that time period so much that we're actually able to kickstart the economy? Infrastructure project per se is not supposed to do anything. It's supposed to create an ecosystem that lifts the entire economy with it. And we got to do that as of yesterday.
So Gauri and Arnab, one of the, I started at the beginning of the show by telling you how amazed I am about what we've achieved as a country. One of the things I want to share with you, and this is something that came out as part of the budget discussions today, is that during the same period that we were all fighting COVID, the government executed 217 projects from the National Infrastructure Pipeline at a value of 1.2 lakh crores and completed it in this financial year. These projects were all started in 2019, which is just a year ago, and got completed. 1.2 lakh crores worth of National Infrastructure Pipeline projects, which were 217 projects, were commenced in 2019 and got completed and executed in this year. It tells you the capacity for execution that has been built up over the last 4-5 years by Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government. And this should give us confidence that as we set out to look at the other 700 to 1,000 projects in the National Infrastructure Pipeline, and as Mohan said, resourcing is not the challenge, that our execution capacity as a government has gone up manifold. And I don't think that is any longer a concern. Yes, sorry, Gauri.
I have one more question related to execution itself. When you talk about raising money and divestment, everybody is expecting Air India to really get us the big bucks. But how long have we been talking about Air India divestment? And divestment itself is going to get us 1.7 lakh crores this year. So we've got to expedite those very tricky process as well.
And no, I can only say this, Gauri and Arnab. I can only say that after the last 9 months, I have a renewed sense of confidence about the ability of the government to do the heavy lifting in almost all areas, including, like you say, disinvestment. I think the markets are buoyant. There is a lot of capital that is interested in investing in India. These assets that have been showcased for disinvestment, if you had asked me 1 year ago versus now, I have a lot more confidence now that there is going to be a lot of capital that is interested in these assets. And therefore the government can meet its disinvestment targets this year, this coming financial year, a lot easier. And with the political will and the commitment to this absolutely new re-architected economic model where the government depends not just on tax revenues and an occasional disinvestment, but makes disinvestment part of its structural way of raising resources to drive growth.
Absolutely. In fact, I agree with you, Rajiv, and I felt that there is in fact no need to limit your objectives by saying 2 banks and 1 insurance company. That's setting a limited target. We can be more ambitious than that. And achieve it. But very important point you made about what's been done in the last 9 months. In fact, I think, Robin, if these things have happened, the government needs to disseminate information about its own achievements a little bit more aggressively, because firstly, I don't believe in these ratings. I am just, this S&P global ratings giving India BBB minus long-term rating. They are so opportunistic about it and so opaque about it. So I agree with the person who said that. But Robin, I think the bigger thing that I felt was, having covered a few budgets before, that this time the language being spoken is very, very different. It is not a political language. This is a government that has freed itself of political pressure at a very critical time when it is 1.5 years, a little bit more into the second term. And then it's talking about this infra push. It is talking about the recognition for R&D, the production-linked incentive scheme for manufacturing. So it's getting into brass tacks talk, which personally I think last 6 years it's never been in this brass tacks mode on the economic front as this time. Robin, do you feel the same way? Did you feel a strategic shift in the main nature of communication, the intensity of the timelines they are setting for themselves?
Well, I think you're dealing with a very confident government who feels that they have the mandate and who feels that this is time to implement and do what they think is the right thing. So when I look at some of the steps they have taken, they all they have tried to take care of the poor person. They tried to take care of the rural sector. They tried to create more jobs on one side. They're trying to focus on healthcare. They're trying to provide cleanliness. And when you look at some of them, they've also taken some of these senior citizen steps, like no tax filing above the age of 75 and so on. So I kind of feel that the government here, the government understands that to attract FDI investment is a key step that is required. So they rationalize the taxes on one side. On the second side, they also realize how are you going to get outside investment? One of the sectors is manufacturing. So in manufacturing, they've taken many steps in terms of providing subsidies, in terms of taking, for example, providing tax holidays to startups and so on, and lower 15% tax rate for people to come in and invest in manufacturing and so on. So I feel some of these steps are really meant to create an India of the future, and that is why I said this has Mr. Modi's stamp all over it. In terms of this is not only a budget meant to counter COVID, right? But it is also a budget meant to really continue India's march forward, which obviously took a hit during COVID. Yeah. And government wants to come back and come back to their policies and really go with the growth-oriented kind of a concept and put in policies where a foreign investor, for example, would want to come in. Because, for example, what is one of the biggest pain points for a foreign investor? Infrastructure, transparency, corruption, right? And by taking steps like digitizing tax reform, by taking steps like putting in more money into infrastructure, roads, railways, the government is kind of creating a groundwork for a better India, India that would welcome foreign investors, where a foreign investor would feel that this is the right place for me to really from China to India.
Yeah, that's beautifully weaving into what I thought I'll be my last question here to Kiran. Gauri, you can articulate it better, but I'm keen to know from someone like Kiran on what impact this will have on India as an investment destination. I mean, it's really on our minds, isn't it, Gauri?
Well, I think, India is definitely got a very, very
can we really get
strong
in terms of FDI? Yes.
Yeah, no, I think, India is gaining a lot of global attention and global recognition, starting with the way it managed COVID. I think we've done an exceptional job and an exemplary job in the way we've managed COVID. The fact that we have actually got the world's largest vaccine production capacity in India shows that, our manufacturing sector in the pharma sector is very strong. I think we need to focus on many of these strengths. How do we bring it to the fore? I think healthcare is certainly an area which augurs well for us. in terms of our future. And I think the measures that this budget has taken in terms of, the FDI and many other, ease of doing business, cost of doing business, these are some of the aspects that makes us an investment destination. And I think when you look at the world, I think India, given the kind of geopolitical alienation that's taking place of China, puts us into a very prized position. And I don't think we should lose this opportunity.
Yeah.
Have a narrow window of opportunity.
No, we are.
To show that we mean serious business. Yes. And I think this is what we ought to do. The budget has definitely enabled this. I don't think we should squander this opportunity by delaying anything, is what I mean. And therefore, I think timely execution is extremely important.
Yeah.
So, Arnab,
I think there's too much at stake. I don't think we can. Yes. Yes, Robin.
Yeah. So what I wanted to add was two things which stand out for me outside everything we spoke about was the insurance one. One, the allowance that the government gave.
Yes.
Allowing people, FDI, to increase that. Secondly, the gift city that we haven't talked much about. One of the statements that the finance minister made was that the gift city in Ahmedabad will become, they're going to make that a hub in terms of a financial center. When you put these two things together,
fintech,
FDI investment in insurance, and basically what I see is the foundations of possibly converting the gift city into not just a financial hub, but also if India can attract insurers out there, we could create an insurance hub out here too, which could lead the
now Robin,
of the European world.
Sure, Gauri. No, Gauri, before you come in, I was actually now, that opens up a whole new debate because I thought the insurance decision was fantastic, Gauri, because not just for the decision itself, it shows a newfound confidence that with a strong Indian management, you don't need to be insecure, that Indian companies can compete and win with the best in the world, and we don't need to be worried about that. I just want, because Robin mentioned that, I sort of just came in. Yeah, Gauri, go on.
Absolutely. I think, now the FM needs to follow up with two specific reforms, Arnab, and I'm sure the entire panel would agree on that and sort of come in there, which is that the next reforms have to be towards, those nitty-gritties about how do you raise money, whether it's about bonds, infra bonds. And the second thing that Robin pointed out about the gift city and becoming a global capital hub, you can't become that till you make changes in your currency controls. You don't need to go the whole hog. You cannot become a Hong Kong overnight, but you make some changes, make an effort, and those reforms,
I think that's a big priority area. That's a big priority area, and who knows better how to raise funds globally otherwise to make the country competitive than Rajiv and Mohandas Pai. So I'd like to get them in on that. When you talk about execution, Rajiv and Mohan, this discussion's getting a bit extended. I can't see Rajiv on the screen, but that becomes that's become a focus area, Mohan. That's become a big focus area.
It becomes a focus area, Arnab. And remember, Mukesh Ambani raised $25 billion in COVID when the whole world was shut down with no roadshows in 2 months, right? We have enough 10 industries who can raise $5-10 billion each. Our IT service industry don't require money. They're throwing up so much of cash. TCS, Infosys, Wipro, and others are throwing up so much of cash, right? Our NTPC, Power Grid, State Bank of India can go take money. Like you said, the execution capacity is important. For that, Arnab, there's one thing the government has to do. Our construction companies have to become strong. They're undercapitalized. Government must pay for the infrastructure on time. I hope there'll be a reform, like Gauri said, in the government paying companies. They don't pay for infrastructure. Now, the contracts have been simplified, but they don't pay you money. See, unless the government pays, because they're a very major player, they must pay on time. They must pay early. They must give your tax refunds on time. They must give the GST refunds on time. They don't do that. That attitude should change, that, you're hanging on to people's money. So execution is important.
That's what I meant,
Execution has to be done. Exactly. Execution is important. Let us make one thing clear. If our companies are well capitalized and large, they can execute. Look at L&T. L&T is well capitalized. They're winning a lot of orders, but we need 10 L&Ts. Are there 10 L&Ts? What did China do? China created 10, 12 giant giant infrastructure companies. With strong balance sheet, you could raise money, you could invest money. In infrastructure is a capital game. So we have to, like Gauri said, improve the corporate bond market. We are talking about the corporate bond market for the last 10 years.
Mohan,
I've been hearing it for so long.
No, once you've created Mohan, we are innovative and hardworking people. Believe me, once you've created the need, then people will step in and we will build great companies in the infrastructure. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Mohan, thank you. Kiran, great to have you on the show. Robin, fantastic thoughts. Gauri, good talking to you. And Rajiv, we just lost him, but very interesting panel. We're getting very positive feedback for this conversation. I think I'm just going to put it up online and maybe it should be shared across. Thank you very much.